So it looks like we have everybody who's going to be joining live today. As indicated, it is recorded and will be posted on the Diocese of Worcester website. First, I'll start with introducing myself. I'm Pete Dunbeck. I'm the chair of the Diocese of Worcester Environmental Stewardship Ministry team. We are very happy to have this opportunity and this wonderful speaker today. We'll begin with a short prayer and an introduction by the diocesan team and in the Diocese of Worcester program. We'll very quickly get to Dr. Lorna Gold's talk. And at the end of the talk, we'll have a Q&A time. We can just turn on the microphones and you can ask your questions directly. And then we'll wrap up the program with some what's next, what's coming next in the Diocese of Worcester program. So to begin, I'd like to offer this short prayer. So in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. God of the universe, we thank you for your many gifts, for the beauty of creation and its rich and varied fruits, for clean water and fresh air, for food and shelter, animals and planet. Forgive us for the times we have taken the earth's resources for granted, wasted what you have given us. Transform our hearts and minds so that we may learn to care and share, to touch the earth with gentleness and with love, respect all living things. We pray for all those who suffer as a result of our waste, greed, and indifference. We pray that the day will come when everyone has enough food and clean water. Help us to respect the rights of all people and all species, and help us to willingly share our gifts today and always. Amen. So on the screen, you'll see the list of the Diocese of Worcester team. It's a great team that we put together a couple of years ago. It brings together many unique talents and perspectives that are really important for the work of this ministry in the diocese. I did want to introduce what we're doing with the Diocese of Worcester ministry team. We're a volunteer team within the diocese. Our goal is to increase awareness about Catholic teaching, about the environment, and provide a framework using Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si. Our two biggest programs last year were standing up a new website, which is available and has a set of resources that are designed both for parishes as well as families and individuals on how to put Laudato Si into action. There's different books and videos that are referenced, as well as individual activities that can be undertaken. We also held a conference at Holy Cross College last year that was very successful, had about 160 people attended and about 50 different parishes represented. Bishop McManus has been very supportive of this effort, and he kicked off the conference last year. Our program this year is designed around two areas. One is the speaker series that we're basically kicking off today and you're now part of, where we bring expertise and perspective from experts, from practitioners of Catholic social teaching, wherever we can find it. And we're very pleased to have Dr. Lorna Gold today. We also have a program where we're trying to build liaisons into every parish in the diocese. And we have support from the bishop and the presbyteral council to have an individual identified in every parish. And the little map on the side shows the number of parishes where we have people identified, and the red dots are the blue dots are where we have people identified, and the red ones are where we're still pursuing establishing liaisons. At the close of the program, we're going to discuss that just briefly as part of our next steps. So with no further ado, what I'd like to do is introduce Dr. Lorna Gold. I met Dr. Gold at an event at BC when she was touring the US on a book tour. And I was really impressed with the range of experience she had in advocating for the environment, most of which was within the Catholic Church setting. But the most powerful point she made on me was her perspective in regard to how her children, her young boys, have brought a new perspective on her environmental work. She described how it gave her greater motivation and really a greater urgency in pursuing these issues, as the degradation we are going to feel are going to be borne by the generations that come behind us. I actually have adopted this in some work I'm doing in the town of Westboro, and have put together some charts that actually very much mimic the work she has done, where the scientific reports, the timeline, I always represent my grandchildren's lives on the timeline to help bring to clarity that it's the future generations that are going to bear the burden, the greatest burden of this climate change. So I'm thrilled to have Lorna Gold join us today. And with no further ado, Lorna, could you please give us your talk, and we'll look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Pete. I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you, and it's amazing the wonders of technology to be able to share that an hour together across the Atlantic Ocean. So I'm going to share my slides, so you won't see me, you'll see my screen share. And yeah, so hopefully afterwards we'll have time for some questions and answers. So here we are. So when I was asked to do this talk, I thought what would be most useful for yourselves in the work that you're doing over there. And I thought perhaps it's really to look at the work I've been doing in the church context in Ireland, because there are many differences, but I think the church is facing quite similar issues in the east coast of America and in the Irish church here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey in bringing climate justice and Laudato Si to life in the church. And yeah, then we can get into some questions and answers about that. So, I mean, this is the question I want to answer. And I mean, take this perhaps with a little pinch of salt. You'll see lots of results that we have had in Ireland, and they're all true. We've had lots of positive results, but we still feel like we're at the very, very start of something. At the weekend, former President Mary McAleese and Sister Joan Chichester were in Ireland, and they talked about the emerging church. And I think that part of the story of Laudato Si is the story of an emerging church, almost from the ruins of a church that in Ireland anyway seems to be often dying. So I'm going to try and address this question of how did we, meaning a small group of lay people mainly, bring climate justice and Laudato Si into the heart of the Irish church. So, as I said, the context here is working within the church is really, really difficult. It can feel at times, especially being a woman working in the church, that it's like a contradiction, the huge contradiction in your life, especially wandering around with your friends or whatever. Church attendance is in decline, perhaps most sharply amongst people who are in their middle age and young in their 30s, who have turned their back on the church. I sense the church is facing a crisis of relevance, particularly with the kind of secularization or the liberalization of Ireland in recent years, where it's seen as a contradiction in terms with being a Catholic. Of course, like yourself, like the church in America, we are facing up to decades or centuries probably of sex abuse scandals and cover-ups and kind of a drip kind of like serious allegations and on this. And then the picture you see here is like one that's kind of become emblematic of the church in Ireland, the mother and baby homes, who this is a mass grave of where mothers and babies in Tuam Diocese were buried for years. We don't know how many or who's buried there, but and then we have the logistical issues of an aging, overworked clergy, and the church in Ireland being very clerical and centered very much on the role of the priest. And theologically, I have to say that 4 years ago, ecology was the last thing on anybody's mind in the church in Ireland. It was just, it's so far from the traditional Catholic perspective in 95% of parishes in the country. So that's the context in which Laudato Si and the whole question of climate justice came to the fore in Ireland. And it's kind of summed up in some ways by my good friend, Father Sean McDonough, who's an eco-theologian, who is just an amazing man, and has really been a prophet of, before Laudato Si came out, and working on biodiversity, working on indigenous rights in the Philippines. And he said this, he said, Irish priests, and of course we've, the missions have gone out, and these Irish priests who are formed have gone to the ends of the earth. Irish priests have been formed to despise the things of earth and to love the things of heaven. And Laudato Si, Pope Francis has brought us from kindergarten to PhD level in ecological theology in one swoop. We need a synod process. So when he talks about Laudato Si and ecology, he always comes back to this point that what's being proposed in or said by Pope Francis in Laudato Si, although it may have been alive and a living theology in some religious orders or some spiritualities, the Celtic spirituality in particular, Celtic spiritualities, it's not widespread within the church, and we need to recognise this, and that if we want to bring Laudato Si really to have an impact on the church, we have to address the anti-earth theology that has dominated Catholicism for at least the last 100 years. And that's no small task. But if you don't do that, whatever we propose will always be seen as a bit of an add-on. It will be seen as something that's kind of optional, or it will be seen as something rather superficial, perhaps, to addressing the deeper issues of how this relates to our faith. So when we were looking at how do we bring this whole climate change and addressing the crisis, and how do we bring it into the church in a way that is not, I should say that we did try to kind of just after Laudato Si propose that this just be like almost not adopted, obviously it's a papal document, but the think that it would just be rolled out as if by magic, and it fell completely flat. Any kind of initiatives that we brought to kind of bring it quickly into the church didn't seem to meet any kind of response. So instead we said, how can Laudato Si help us respond to the needs of the church today? Can it help us to heal wounds, to support pastoral renewal in parishes? Can it engage young people? Can it remove burdens from the clergy? Can it provide space for dialogue with contemporary culture? And can it promote a new evangelization? And in central to that, we recognise the need for upskilling of leadership at all levels within the church on the climate science, and you could say more broadly on ecology, and then eco-theology. That this has not been part of the tradition that most leaders within our church have been formed on. So that is a huge gap if we want to bring this to life. So what we proposed and what was accepted by the bishops in September of 2016 was to create a Laudato Si working group. And I know you already have an environmental stewardship group in your diocese, but this was a national working group. And we, in proposing it to the bishops, we wanted to build a space that was creative, where we could network, where we could fill those knowledge gaps, and where we could also put institutional proposals to the bishops on Laudato Si. And this is the group that has been set up. So this group's been in existence since the end of 2016. And I put the faces up there deliberately to give you a sense of what this group is like. The bishops agreed to have the group established under the Council for Catechetics, which you might think, that's interesting. Why didn't they put it under Justice and Peace or set up something new? But I think it's very, very interesting, the fact that this is a theological issue, the recognition that there's a theological issue here, there's a pastoral issue, and putting it under catechetics in many ways gives it the widest reach possible into the whole of the church. It's not seen as something that's a specialist kind of initiative, but it's something that has to be embedded within our catechetics across the entire church, right from primary school all the way up to adult faith formation. And then to build the links across to the other bishops' commissions, we have a link into the Irish Council for Justice and Peace through their diocesan worker, their national research advisor, and also through Professor John Sweeney, who is Ireland's leading climatologist. So we have a very, very good mix of people on this group, from young people to leading theologians, to the Bishop's Publications House, the National Director for Catechetics, pastoral workers, and Sister Catherine Brennan in particular, who has been running Eco Congregation Ireland, which is a precursor to all the work that we're doing on climate justice and eco-theology. There's been a group working on this for many, many years, over a decade, working ecumenically. So we wanted this to be a space to be creative, led by the Spirit, everyone's talents being welcome, and daring to dream big. And I have to say, my experience of working with this team has been one of the most joyful and inspiring experiences of my recent life. I think that we created an environment of very much in the spirituality of Laudato Si, a space to work that's creative, but also one that is very prayerful and very open to new ideas. And the two pictures you see here are from the World Meeting of Families, and I could write a book, and I might write a book on this, because we had the most extraordinary experience of God's providence coming to support these initiatives, where we built Ireland's first new holy well in the past 100 years for the World Meeting of Families. And then on this side, you see some of the education initiatives that we ran through drama and engaging young people in the message of Laudato Si. The second thing that we did was to really fill those key knowledge gaps. And perhaps this has been the most important thing that we've done to date. We positioned ourselves as a group, I guess because we have this kind of cross-functional kind of role, as a resource to the rest of the church, to be able to offer in-service trainings for the bishops, for the diocese, and for the staff of the Bishops' Conference. And we spent a full year delivering different kinds of trainings for different parts of the staff of the conference, and then culminating in January of last year, where we did a full day in-service training, or it was a retreat really, for all the bishops, where we sat down with the bishops for a full day, all the bishops of Ireland, and we brought them up to speed on the climate crisis, on biodiversity crisis, and on what's in Laudato Si and what it really means for the church today. And I think that day with the bishops was really it was really transformative for both for the work that we've been doing and also for each of the bishops. They would have to say that themselves, but I think that given the kind of amount of change that's happened since, and the way that the diocese have embraced Laudato Si, it shows that that really made an impact. And what was interesting to me on that particular day with the bishops was that the person they really wanted time to talk with was the climate scientist. More than any of the rest of us, they wanted a one-to-one conversation with a climate scientist. And they wanted to ask in private with him what are all the difficult questions that perhaps they couldn't ask in public. And that really reassured them and gave them the confidence to be able to move forward and to know that this is something that's very serious and needs to be addressed, and there's a moral imperative here. Since then, some of the key institutional measures we've brought forward. So this group within the catechetics then proposes measures to the bishops, which they then have adopted. So some of the key ones that they've adopted the annual season of creation, which is just really this year has exploded within the church in Ireland, events happening everywhere. They have divested from fossil fuels and as a group, and then they're now in the process of all the dioceses in Ireland making individual commitments to divest from fossil fuels. We are working on an adult faith development programme, which will include various modules on Laudato Si. We've worked with the Catholic Schools Week, which has outreach into 80% of the primary schools in Ireland. So they did one week on Laudato Si, and next year we're doing another week all on Laudato Si, where a curriculum for a whole week will go into all the Catholic schools on living Laudato Si. And then we included a Laudato Si dimension into the Pope's visit to Ireland in August of last year, which was very, very powerful because of the reach that that visit had, both across Ireland and across the world. One of the key things that we did as part of that visit was what we called the Our Common Home project. And one of the main elements of that was to really be creative and to, as I said, through drama, through various dimensions of the work. But one of the key parts of it was a garden called the Our Common Home garden. And we might not have time just now to show the video of the garden. We'll see it at the end if we have time. But it is a really powerful example of how a simple idea like creating a biodiversity garden, a garden that gives the story of creation together, can really heal and can transform and can bring people together. And it was a really extraordinary experience of bringing very diverse people together. And many churches and parishes have taken on this initiative, this challenge that was set out by Cardinal Tagle when he opened the garden. He said, here you've turned a car park into a garden. How is it that in our parishes we give far more space to cars than we do to people and to creation? So this idea that we can transform our church grounds to allow biodiversity and to build to change in that way. I've already mentioned the divestment from fossil fuels. That has been a really cornerstone part of the work that we're doing, because we feel that through using our investments to shift we start to shift public opinion. And this prominent commitments from the church have been really fundamental in shifting, in raising the bar for the government, and for other organisations to feel that they also need to take a moral stance against the industry that's been most egregious in its damage to the climate. And the announcement for the fossil fuel divestment was made in Christchurch Cathedral on the day before Pope Francis arrived to Ireland. It was an extraordinary moment where all people of all faiths came together to pray. We called it the Prayer for the Planet. And during that very moving service, where all different faiths gave their lament and their praise for the earth, our own Bishop William Crean made the announcement on behalf of the Bishops' Conference. And I might play you just a very short clip of his announcement, because it gives a sense of the feeling and the sense of emotion that was in the room.
This evening, on the eve of Pope Francis' historic visit to Ireland, I wish to announce and welcome the decision of the Irish Catholic Bishops' Conference to divest from fossil fuels.
I'll just let you hear that little bit, but you can watch the full video when you get the video afterwards, because it's very, very moving to hear the full statement from Bishop Crean. He talks about this being more than symbolic and calls on all faith organisations in Ireland to divest from fossil fuels. And I think if you think back to the start of my slides, given the crisis of relevance and the sense that the church here is on its way out sometimes, that evening, packed cathedral, full of young people, full of people from all faiths, there together, united to hear such an important announcement, really, it gave me great hope. And I think it gave many people hope that we can move forward as a church, and we can start to rebuild the church through the message of Laudato Si. So our journey on Laudato Si continues, and some of the things that we've been working on very much is building a network of people to bring Laudato Si to all the parishes of the country and all the dioceses. And Pete talked about that in terms of you're almost a step ahead of us, getting right down to the parishes. We're really still working at the diocesan level, but our hope is that we'll have point people in every parish in the next year. There's 3,000 parishes in Ireland, so we need to work really hard to get to every parish in the country. We already have a growing network of eco-parishes. We have around 40 associated organisations with our Laudato Si working group here, and potential to grow on the different lines of approach in Laudato Si. And I think that's what's most interesting for me, is Laudato Si covers all the various different aspects of parish life and faith, life in faith communities. And we can work to develop that out and to work on different angles, depending on what area different people are most interested in. So our plans which have already begun, so to start a synodal type process over the next 2 years in Ireland. And so what does a synodal type process mean? Well, we kind of knew we weren't going to get, we would have to wait maybe for a formal synod to happen, though we've not stopped, we might still ask for that. But in the meantime, it's possible to have regional synodal processes. And we already had one in the north of Ireland for 5 dioceses, and it was a huge success and has led to a lot of energy and work coming from the north of Ireland. We're now looking to do 4 similar meetings regionally, bringing dioceses together so that you can learn from each other on what it means to wake up to climate change and embrace Laudato Si. Our aim is to have all dioceses, Catholic dioceses, divested from fossil fuels in the next 18 months, and to scale up the eco-parishes initiatives. And interestingly, we're going to look at how we can build a kind of partnership between the eco-parishes and the Department of the Environment and some of the governmental structures, to see if we can look to really scale up the work that's happening, for all the work around retrofitting and energy and solar panels and all those kind of things that are kind of nuts and bolts of lowering your carbon footprint. And we know that the government programme will be open to supporting some of that. And then engaging with the Catholic schools in the climate protest movement. I'll come back to that in 1 second, I'm nearly finished. So the regional processes I mentioned, so we are going to have 4 more regional meetings, bringing together all the various stakeholders with a process of reflection on Laudato Si and trying to see what's the key approach in each of the dioceses and each region, because they're all different. And then connecting with the national dialogue and climate action and sustainable energy communities. Scaling up eco-parishes then is a vital part of what we need to be doing. And it actually made me think, when you were talking about the work you're doing, whether there might be an opportunity to do some kind of twinning with some dioceses, with your diocese, with one of the dioceses here, looking at Ireland being a pilot country with the GCCM sustainability plan, and then trying to help to source funding for this work. I mentioned the climate strikes because I think that one of the things that has happened over the past year, which is really giving a lot of energy, is the fact that young people are waking up to the climate crisis. And as Pete said at the start, as a mother of 2 young boys, I've been really in the front line of that here in Ireland. When Greta Thunberg went on strike last year, I kind of didn't think twice about going on climate strike myself every Friday. So a few of us mothers and dads and now grandparents, and now there's quite a large group that do a climate strike every Friday outside our parliament or in our local town here as well. But we're really trying to engage the Catholic schools in the climate strike movement. And it's been very interesting because the Catholic secondary schools have not really been at the forefront of this, despite Laudato Si. I think there's a bit of nervousness around encouraging children to go out on the streets, naturally. But I've worked with quite a few of the principals of Catholic schools, and this was a wonderful event on the anniversary of Laudato Si last May, where we got the whole school from St Mary's in Liston, Varna, more commonly known for the matchmaking festival. But this time they were out on the streets for the climate strike on the anniversary of Laudato Si, and then did a wonderful assembly together on the need for ecological conversion. And then in the most recent strike in September, myself and my colleagues on the Laudato Si team worked to bring together people of all faiths to have a faith presence on the streets for the climate strike. And we had our wonderful Laudato Si globe, where Laudato Si was really present on the streets in Ireland, literally going through the streets, carried on a stretcher. And it was very interesting for us as well that for the first time before the strike in September, the bishops came out in support of the climate strikers. And to me, that was very significant for the Catholic schools in particular, and for the rest of us to feel that we had the support of the bishops in the student strike movement. So just a few of the lessons before I finish. There are many lessons, and I'm not sure where to even start. But in terms of my experience over the past few years, I think what I'd say is, when it comes to things like divestment, these are not ends in themselves. Fossil fuel divestment only happens in a faith context when you enable the ecological conversion. And there are practical solutions for that to happen. And I think that's what happened here in Ireland, that the start of the ecological conversion happened, and then there were some key decisions then able to be made. We need to join the dots, and often the work of our group is joining the dots on behalf of the Bishops' Conference, because we find that our church is used to working in silos, and we, through Laudato Si, have been building connections, including how we use our resources. Some of these are more related to divestment. We've worked along with divestment advisors, looking at how we build divestment for religious orders, how we ensure that funds are ethical, and building synergies and generating momentum with different campaigns and eco groups. One of the wonderful things I see in the work with Laudato Si in Ireland is that we're working with everybody. We're not precious about saying we're working just on Laudato Si. In a parish or a diocese, if there's already existing groups, we work alongside them and we work together. We collaborate with the various groups, and often trying not to replace things that are already in existence. Relationship building, as with anything, has proved critical. I think that in my role as the co-chair of the Laudato Si working group, it's been about being a trusted advisor and friend, a critical friend sometimes, but working with the various within the structures, taking time to understand how those structures work, but also having the courage to take risks and to be bold, and ask for forgiveness rather than permission sometimes. So that's my presentation. I'm really delighted to be with you and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. A very contentful presentation and very informative. I would like to open it up for questions, and maybe I can prime the pump a little bit here, but just unmute yourself if you have a question, and speak up, and we'll try to take as many questions as possible. One thing you've mentioned is eco parish network and so forth. Maybe you could, what exactly does that mean in your context, and what are you trying to get parishes to do?
So we already in Ireland and the UK have an initiative that's called Eco Congregation. I don't think it exists in the US in the same way. It's an ecumenical initiative. So the work that we're doing has been trying to work with Eco Congregation, who have a program which is called the Green Parish, the Eco Parish Award. So instead of the Laudato Si group setting up a new initiative, we have partnered with the Eco Congregation Network, which has already got quite a big outreach in Ireland. So some of the things that you have to do to become an eco congregation are, they have a list of things, going from how you bring ecological issues into the liturgical and the prayer life of the community. Then there would be things around, there would be a whole thing around the land use of the parish. So things like rewilding, encouraging biodiversity in your parish grounds. And then there would be a whole thing around transportation, around the how you get people to and from services, those kind of things. And then a whole package is around sustainability of the actual the buildings of the parish. So we, at the moment, we haven't got a formal kind of, so they have a list of things you need to qualify to get an Eco Parish Award. And it's like in Ireland, we have this whole thing called the Green Flag Award for schools and for towns. And this is extending it to parishes, effectively. So we would be supporting that. But we, as a Laudato Si team, one of the things that we want to do is to try and see whether we can get a more formalised arrangement with the Irish, so the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, which offers grants to different kinds of communities to retrofit and to basically to lower your ecological footprint. So we're in the process of trying to do that, to get that formalized and set up, because that would enhance the reach of this. One, obviously the obstacle that's always brought up right at the start is finance. If you can't get the money together, well, finance and people, you can't find the people to do it and you can't find the money to make it happen, it's always a big obstacle. Whereas we know from experience and from parishes that have done this, that it can be done on a cost neutral basis, but you need to be able to source the capital up front in order to make that happen. So there are various ways to do that, and that's one of the projects we're working on now.
Excellent. Any questions from participants here?
I have a question. I guess one suggestion and one comment. The suggestion just came from what you just said about all the different roles that are available for people to help. So many different, somebody can help with gardening, somebody can help with finance. It's amazing. And I think sort of listing those as just ideas for a church. A person might not think they can contribute, just like, well, what does it happen that if I pick up one piece of trash, does it help, But one little thing or one small thing, excuse me, I also think it'll be helpful to germinate ideas within the parishes, and it's wonderful that you're sharing among the parishes. My comment is I am so happy to hear that the Catholic Church Central put money behind their mouth. I mean, going to reduce and eventually eliminate fossil fuels from, the church, maybe even who their vendors are or whatever, I just think is huge. And I think it's a great prototype for other institutions. These Catholics are leaders in many ways. And companies, schools, churches, municipalities may get a great idea from what you've done centrally. So I just want to say, way to go.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? Can you hear me?
Yes, Gina, thank you.
Dr. Gold, I'm really intrigued by the fact that you were able to get all of the Irish Catholic bishops on board. And so could I ask what their initial response was when you first approached them? And how long did it take for them to be so enthusiastic? We'd love to have that happen here.
So yeah, I think that the initial approach was, so we only had to get really a couple of bishops or even one on board to set up our team. So we found luckily the bishop who's responsible for catechetics was very amenable to he was very much in the spirit of Laudato Si, so he welcomed the initiative. I guess it helps, like I work for TROCRA, which is an agency of the Bishops' Conference, so we were able as TROCRA, we've been working on climate justice for over a decade, so we were able to come, we'd worked with them on pastoral letter, so we were able to come with a very strong moral argument to say this needs to be we need to at least explore how this happens. And as I said, it went very slowly through, so that was we set up our commission or working group in September 2016. It then went quite slowly through 2017. I was very frustrated because I was trying to get them to divest from fossil fuels, and I kept kind of just pushing it to the bishops divest, and they kept coming back just not having made any decisions. So I was a bit confused about what that was. And it was only when we realized that this was much more of a theological issue, and it was an issue to really delve much deeper, that that we started to kind of make a bit of traction. But I have to say that we were one of the, I don't know if it's quite a master stroke or perhaps we were just very lucky, but certainly the fact that Pope Francis was coming to Ireland in last year in September, we kind of said that we managed to kind of put it onto the bishop's agenda that if the Pope was coming, they should really have done at least a day on Laudato Si. So that was really, I think that they couldn't really refuse one day to prepare on Laudato Si. And that day of full retreat with the bishops, where we had the best people in Ireland, really the top people to come and present, made a huge difference. And as I was saying, that day, the person they most wanted to talk to was the climatologist, because and also the theologians, but the climatologist really was so key to their helping them to understand that this is really happening. Like even 18 months ago, and I'm sure even within the church, more generally still within the clergy, there might be questions, is this real? And is it the scale and the urgency of the threat? Is it over, so I think that really was the turning point for us, was getting the bishop into a room with the climatologist.
Thank you. I think that was divinely ordained to save the Irish Church. The Pope.
Let's hope so.
Others with questions? One thing you said that I made note of, you referred to yourself as a friend, a critical friend, and in your comments as you introduced the material, you referred to a crisis of relevance for the church, which I thought was frank, stark statement. Do the bishops you work with see environmental advocacy as a way to change the discussion and to create a greater relevance? Is that a well-received concept at this point, or how do you could you expand on that a little bit?
I think some of them do. I think that it's growing, the sense of awareness. I mean, if I look at one thing that's absolutely clear from the work that myself and others who are doing this kind of work now in the Church of Ireland is that we almost don't see the kind of the empty churches, and we don't see the aging and the kind of sense of I don't know, the like whenever you do something on Laudato Si and on environment, the churches are full, like, and there's energy and there's a sense of engagement with people. So I think that maybe the bishops have been quite slow to see this, but certainly the season of creation this year, and I think that that's become a really key part of our work, is the fact that we have this opportunity now in September, from the day of prayer of creation all the way through to the Feast of St. Francis, to get this mainstreamed in all the parishes. And this year, I think that half the diocese, which is already like half the diocese, took the season of creation series, which is, so that's that, and this is the first year that it's been promoted. So I think that really shows that there is an amount of leadership now, and certainly I would say there's maybe a dozen, so that's maybe not quite half, but like I'd say there's a growing number of bishops who see this as something something that is life-giving to the church. And I really expect next year, with the 5th anniversary of Laudato Si, for that to grow, for there to be even more engagement. And I think that, I mean, in Ireland, I think like other places, this is the ecology and like, so eco-spirituality is very much driven by the religious orders, and particularly the female religious orders. And in Ireland, like other places, that's an aging demographic. But it's been quite extraordinary for me to see the almost like the life within those orders, just almost despite the age profile. There's a vibrancy, and just to take one order, for example, the Sisters of Mercy have been running climate justice conferences in Leitrim, Carrick-on-Shannon. It's the middle of Ireland, for the past 3 years. And those conferences have become like a real centre point for climate advocacy in that whole part of Ireland. And they don't stay amongst themselves, they engage all the relevant ecological partners in the region, and adopt some quite they give support to political campaigns, as advocacy campaigns as well. Like there was a campaign to ban fracking in that part of the world, which they got behind, and then that's now resulted in the fracking being banned in Ireland. So yeah, so I mean, I think it's a mixed picture, but it's one that's growing. Like the engagement of the bishops is definitely growing, and I think the question of young people is one that really makes it relevant to the bishops, because they look and they see that, I mean, it's not so much I mean, I don't think it's about Laudato Si being instrumentalized to get young people back to the church, but I think it's about having something of relevance to young people to say, and to engage them in a way that is quite it's on a spiritual level as well as the kind of general environmental level. So yeah. Who generated the curriculum on Laudato Si for the Catholic schools? So I'm sorry, I'm reading. So we have the curriculum on Laudato Si. Of course, it can be shared. it's not like we have one curriculum on Laudato Si. The work of the Laudato Si working group has been to look at how do you embed Laudato Si in the curriculum and where is it most relevant. So embedding it within the primary RE, religious education, that's quite well advanced. The second level education, so the RE program for secondary schools is something that we're working on just now. And the main people who have been working on that are Veritas, who are the bishop's publisher, the official Catholic Church publisher in Ireland. So I can certainly put you in touch with the key people in there who are working on the materials and the resources for that.
So thank you very much for your talk, and it is recorded. I'd be very looking forward to getting the video that you referred to, and any other of the content that's come up. We can follow up and make sure that that gets disseminated. One of the things I wanted to say in wrapping up here is we have other programs that are going on. One activity that I wanted people to be aware of is that we have these programs we call roundtable meetings, where we get parishes from different sections of the diocese together. We had our first one at St. Anne's in Shrewsbury. We have another one coming up December 1st in the center of Worcester at Christ the King Parish. If you're interested in participating in that, please reach out to me. We have another speaker signed up for December 8th, and Dr. Aaron Lowes, who's a theology professor from a college in New Jersey, St. Elizabeth College. We'll be talking about finding your individual role and how to respond to the crisis and to the feelings of urgency that many of us share. I did want to also highlight the liaison program, which is just getting underway. We are just trying to now identify the parish liaisons. On the slide, you can see the description. It's very much a communications role, where the diocesan team would like to have aid and assistance in getting the word out into parishes. At this point, we have 21 parishes with a liaison identified. If you're from a parish and you don't see a little blue flag on the map there, and would like to reach out to me and show an interest in this, we expect this role to be pretty limited amount of time commitment. We're designing it because everybody's lives are busy, to be a liaison to basically help pass information from the diocesan program into the parishes in an efficient way and timely way. Again, follow up with me. My email address is on the slide. It's also been used in the notice for this meeting. Thank you very much for attending, and would encourage you to send me feedback and send any of us on the diocesan team feedback concerning this program and other ideas for how we proceed. Lorna, thank you very much for your time and your commitment to this effort. And I got a great deal out of your talk, and have been inspired by your book and by your activities in Ireland, and look forward to continuing the discussion.
Thank you.